America. Watch the movie Atlas Shrugged 1 and 2. And John Galt is one of the Rothschilds. Where you go? Where I tell you to go,
Job 30:1. But now, they that are younger than I have me in derision.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And it says, whose fathers I would have disdained to have set them with the dogs of my flock.
Yeah, so Job is telling you, look, he wouldn't even let the so-called white man sit with the dog of his flock. And the dog is polluted.
It's a low animal.
That's filth.
It's a low animal.
Yeah, that's right. Because 9 times out of 10, the so-called white man will commit bestiality on the dog and rape the dogs. Go ahead.
Yes, whereto might the strength of their hands profit me, in whom old age was perished.
So Job is looking at it like, how can these so-called white people help me? They was broke. They was impoverished. All you got to do is read Malachi, the 1st chapter. Go ahead.
For want and famine, they were solitary.
For want and famine, they were solitary. So right before Alexander the Greek came into power, because I'm going to tell you something, you had Israelites in this army, and Aristotle was the one who taught Alexander how to govern himself. And Aristotle was a so-called black man, okay? And you had Israelites, which were Negroes and Haitians and Jamaicans in Alexander's army. And that's when you so-called white people were sworn to the Maccabees. There go Aristotle right there. There go Alexander.
That's an Indian tapestry of Aristotle right there. Teaching Alexander.
Yeah, see? All right, and then
what do they got him as?
And see, and he was teaching them, look, he was telling them, look, you got to make these nations recognize that y'all are the dominant power. You see? That's what he was telling, because what he was doing, he was finna go up against the Persians, because they was in power. The Persians are you had the Persians and the Medes in power, but the Persians came further up ahead than the Japhetic people, and the Japhetic people are the Hawaiian Samoans and the Tonganese today, okay? And the Persians are Iran, okay?
It says, for want and famine, they were solitary.
That's when they were pushed into the mountains.
Fleeing into the wilderness.
See, go ahead.
In the former time, desolate and waste.
Yeah, because they didn't have nothing. They were broke. They ain't had nothing. Go ahead.
And it says,
that's when they went to the mountains.
Cave dwellers. There's cave dwellers.
we pushed them in the mountains in the Dark Ages for political and economic reasons, and we had a lot of them in slavery, and we were popping a lot of their women for concubines. Go ahead.
And it says,
that's when they was right there. Why you think
cut
that?
up mellows by the bushes and juniper roots for their meat.
Hey, you seen the rotten part of a tree, the rotten part of the bottom of a tree, like it gets all rotten, like it just been like it's hollowed out, like it's all rotten. So they was eating that. So-called white people was eating that. You see, I wish I had one. It just all rotted out, like it just dead. They was eating it.
It says they went driven forth from among men.
Yeah, because another thing too is part of that leprosy. You see, because back in the ancient time, they would if you had leprosy, they would cast you out. But right now, the so-called white man got leprosy, but he's a clean leper, meaning you can shake his hand and won't catch it. But back in the ancient time, you would catch it. You were basically like, look, you got to cast him out. It's like a disease, you know. And then if you put a so-called white man up under ultraviolet light, you would see that there's something wrong with his pigment. Ultraviolet light camera. Go ahead.
And it says they were driven forth from among men.
And that's why they put on sunblock. Because when that sunblock get on them and you put them up under that ultraviolet light, they would be dark skinned like us. That's what that sunblock help them basically fight the sun, the radiation from the sun. Go ahead.
They were driven forth from among men. They cried after them as a thief.
Because they steal everything. They're like they raped and robbed and murdered the whole earth. They stole this land. They own stolen land right now. So that's another reason why we pushed them into the mountain for political reasons. But even though we had some of them in slavery and we had popped some of their women. Go ahead.
And it says, to dwell in the clefts of the valleys, in caves of the earth.
Cavemen.
And in the rocks.
See? So that's why they always like rock climbing, but they don't understand that's what they used to do. That's their part of their heritage.
To get to that
They was in the mountains for 1,000 years. And them so-called Jews over there, which are Amalekites according to the Bible, that's one of the Esau's sons' offspring, the Amalekites, and they the head tribe of the so-called white people. You see? But when you go into the Khazar Empire about Kagan Bulin, he converted because it was a war. It was a war with them Arabs, and it was a war with us when we was over there. And Kagan Bulin was looking to see which one he was going to accept, and he went to Judaism. And Judaism is synonymous with the Talmud. They interchangeable, okay? So they converted to Judaism, and the Talmud go back to Babylonian worship, okay? Which that goes back to them Ethiopians, because the Ethiopians are the ancient Babylonians, and their biblical nationality are Cushites.
And also to add to that, we just read that they lived in the clefts of the rock. Now the Edomites lived in Israel down here.
Yeah.
And those rocks, if you look at the word, it's called Petra. If you type Petra in on Google, it'll be a
Prime rocks.
Yeah, it'll be like
They'll
a cave.
be cut in.
It'll be cut in
rocks.
like caves like you can live in there. That's where they dwell. That's why these scriptures is.
And to add what this brother's saying is that the modern day skyscrapers that they have today, they're like a buzzword for them or a key word for them is caves. That's what they call the sky, like a skyscraper like this. Look at it. When you go up to it, it's like if you build a mountain and you be able to go into the cliffs of the rocks. That's what these high up in the big cities, they call the skyscrapers. They name them caves, man. They're like mountains when they build them up. So that's why you have the richest of rich. What do? They live in the penthouse. They always want to get the penthouse, the top of the rock. So that's what Esau would do. Whoever was the highest establishment would live at the top of the mountain. You see what I'm saying? So we don't go up. The majority of Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, they're afraid of heights. I mean, that's probably in your spirit. Because I know some Edomites that will rock climb to the top just to stand up there. Just so they say they stood up there and they made it to the top, but that was it. Right?
Also you have, you're supposed to build a building over 3 stories north.
Yeah, because if that man fall off of it, then you're accountable for that death. Yeah.
So America, they build it out of
Yeah, you know the 3 stories. You fall, you live off 3 stories. You live off that. You die, you probably break an arm.
Supposed to be flat at the top. Flat at the top. But I don't think it's like 3 stories in there. I don't think it's like 3 stories in there. But you're not supposed to build it so high to where the man will fall off. And I don't think it's in there. But if it's in there, the brother put it up and we find it. Roll with it. But because they'll say the Edomites was done away with in the Roman and the Jewish war. Okay? Those were Edomites fight Israelites. They just took on the name Romans. The real Romans, when you go deep into history, the real Romans are the Japhetic people. Okay? They took that name Roman from Romulus. Okay? That's what it goes back to. And that was the beginning of the Roman Empire. It was started with Japhites when you go into the history, but the so-called white man just took it over and took this name. When you read the book of Josephus, it tell you how when they came into power, they were taking those names and taking people's history that didn't belong to the so-called white people. Read what you got.
It says, Ecclesiastes 4:16 says, there is no end of all the people.
So there's no end of all the people. So if these people say, oh, the Edomites are done away with, oh, the Israelites are done away with. No, the scripture said no end of all the people. Okay? And Esau is the only one that the Heavenly Father is not going to have mercy on. He's going to wipe Esau out after 1,000 years. After he served 1,000 years of slavery up under the Negro, Latinos, and Native Americans. So he's the only one that's going to be wiped out. But he got to serve his judgment first. So the Edomites are still here today.
That's why they got a table of nations.
says, there is no end of all the people, even of all that have been before them. They also that come after shall not rejoice in him. Surely this also is vanity. Vexation.
Yeah, that's why we call people Judah, Israel, even how you say the people of other origins, they might know, like you say, if they're into their whole like history, but a lot of the times they don't know who they are according to the Bible, so that's why we call them by their name. It's not just us, because the Lord has set us up to specifically separate us, but to tell the table of the nation.
Can we get some more folk guitars in these
So
monitors?
these people on the side are around still. They're here. They might not be accommodating themselves as who they are, but they are still here. Because his brother was saying, the table of nations, the Lord has set up these people by their fathers. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, because what do you have? You had somebody that my man. That's the guy that missed. He was like shake up the guy. Before then, you could actually trace yourself back a little bit. But when he did that, he just shook it up. Like he took it and like, you know when you wash dominoes, you ever play dominoes? Where you wash everything? That's the guy right there.
Hey, you can read it out, but don't lose that picture. But that's the guy, Joe Hannon Blumenbach. Hey, but read the highlighted part.
On the first page right here.
Whatever's highlighted, I can't read it.
All right, done. And it says,
no, there.
Okay.
Is that highlighted?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
This is from the Babylon to Timbuktu.
What page you on?
I'm on page 21.
Okay.
About the second paragraph, and it says Europe began to emerge out of the sloth of ignorance, out of the sloth of ignorance, and certain Germans and other conceived of themselves as belonging to a superior race.
So that's where that white supremacy comes in. They start saying they're pure and they start separating people by color. Go ahead.
John F. Blumenbach, a German, 1752 to 1840, was the first to divide humanity on the basis of skin color.
So that's the way these so-called Caucasians, so-called white people look at you based off his skin color. That's the way it's designed. This is a racist society. They're trying to say we racist, but this is a racist society. That's the way it was built. You see? That's the record. Go ahead.
You want me to skip to the next highlighted part?
No. Read that. Because you're going to mention something about the Greeks.
And it says, up to this time, no such attempt had been made.
Up to this time, no such attempt had been made because it was going into the Renaissance. That's when the so-called white man was coming back into power in 1453. Okay? You see? During the Dark Ages, and the Renaissance means rebirth. It's a French word.
Well, his classification, I said Salakia, his classification set up a color line to the determinant of latter generations.
Of latter